When you're watching Black Widow, let me just start off by saying that this movie had some promise to it. It had a chance. There was opportunity here that was definitely missed. Um all things considered, I think Scarlett Johansson does a great job as this character. Um there were certain moments I guess I didn't like, but that's more towards the script and the writing and the dialogue and certain directions that I think is it feels a lot more like Scarlett Johansson than it does Natasha Romanoff, if that makes sense, but that's just me. Meanwhile, I think that the supporting characters like David Harbour and Florence Pugh do a great job of portraying their characters, being their characters, and figuring themselves out. I think that Rachel Weisz is fine. She comes in, I mean, she's in the beginning, but she doesn't come in until later on, and by then it's kind of, I didn't really, you could have replaced her with somebody else, I guess, but I don't know. Um, Let me think, what else is there? The action and the fight scenes are pretty well done. I think they do a really good job. A bit choppy sometimes, cut here, cut there, but I understand it. That's kind of the game. And I definitely think the coolest part about this movie is the falling sequence when they destroy the Red Room. Spoilers, you know what I mean? Do I even need to say that at this point? But they blow up the Red Room, and then you see Natasha falling down and flying through all the debris and stuff. I thought that was cool. I thought that was a pretty big selling point of the movie. But okay, this movie takes place between the ending of Civil War to what we see in Infinity War. So it takes place between when Natasha helps out Steve and Falcon and everybody else, like breaks them out of prison and whatnot. So it's within that Civil War timeline. It's like after Tony and Cap split up and Cap goes on the run, and when Cap shows up to save everybody, it's with Natasha and whoever else. You know what I mean? So it's them trying to like bring everybody back. So they work together. So it's in that timeline, in the Civil War timeline. So, and look, I don't like very much that this is a prequel. I think that this movie is long overdue. I think that had they done this earlier, before Civil War, it would have made setting up the future characters like Yelena so much easier, so much more effortless, I think that after Captain America Winter Soldier, I think if they had thrown in a Black Widow movie during 2016 after Civil War, I think this is where the movie would have fit really nicely. Obviously, maybe a 2013 release, earliest possible. After the Avengers, I think there's a lot of interest in Natasha Romanoff and Black Widow. And then with Captain America the Winter Soldier, she obviously does a great performance on that. I think that the story fits very well for her on something like that with S.H.I.E.L.D. But I feel like we could have gotten a 2013 movie release, her own solo film, alongside, a movie like Thor the Dark World or whatever. And she would have been able to, one, have her own movie, I guess, and then two, to show that she had like another family or something else in the mix, but she didn't really consider them. To show it after Avengers Endgame, it's kind of weak because there's a line that Cap says is that like, do we know if she had family? And he's like, no. Yeah, us. Like implying that she only had them when she had Yelena and she had Alexei and whoever. So it kind of feels like they missed something there. She had people who cared about her, or at least a family, I guess, but on the one hand, she didn't know, and on the other hand, but this is after Civil War, so Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, she didn't call anybody, she didn't try to figure anything out. It's kind of weird that way, but whatever. So basically, she's on the run from Agent Ross, Thunderbolt Ross from Civil War. He's chasing after Black Widow, and she's on the run from him. She ends up in Sweden or Norway or whatever, and she gets sent a package from Yelena, who's also a Black Widow, but she's been mind controlled to just be like a living assassin weapon or whatever, you know what I mean? And then she gets exposed to a toxin or a chemical that like resets her or brings her back after she killed the person who saved her. And so now it's her job to basically bring them back. I'm also skipping the beginning of this movie, which is we see a little Natasha and a little Yelena and Alexei and Mina or whatever her name is, Rachel Weisz's character is. And we basically see them go through an adventure, you know what I mean? They have to get away or escape, go to Cuba or whatnot. I just remember seeing that sequence of like little Natasha, a little backstory of like how they all started off as a family, but it's a fake family. They're just like undercover, and Yelena and Natasha are pretending to be sisters, and Alexei and Mina are pretending to be husband and wife in suburban America, and they like the American Pie song and stuff like that. So it's confusion, it's family, it's fake family, it's real, but it's not real. So, and that whole sequence messes me up because little Natasha, little Nat, she goes like, I want to go back to Ohio, which is like, no, you don't. Nobody in their right mind would say that. It's like, that's terrible dialogue, all right? But anyway, she says that, her and Yelena get separated, and it's the end for them, whatever. They never really see each other again. And so Natasha is Black Widow. She blows up she thinks she destroys the Red Room so she can leave and go to S.H.I.E.L.D., defect or whatever. And so she does, but she doesn't. It's a whole thing. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the beginning sequence of like, I understand why they show it, to show that they used to be a pretend family, but I just don't like the part where it's important, but it's not important. It is important, but it's just that like, I feel like it could have gone a different way. But I did like how Alexei showed his strength and his powers, you know what I mean? His super soldier abilities as the Red Guardian or as the Russian Captain America, you know what I mean? I thought it was cool how he just like lifted heavy stuff like nothing to show his super strength and whatever. And showed how he played into his roles, how he did well, but he didn't really like it, he didn't really care about it. He was kind of like, I just want to do the real stuff now, you know? Do the actual fights and whatever. And so we see Yelena reach out to Natasha, not before she got chased after Taskmaster. And this Taskmaster is pretty badass. I thought, as a villain, it was a great idea, you know, to have somebody that can mimic all of the other superheroes and to fight Black Widow. I thought that was something really cool. And Taskmaster is by far the most, I wanted them to be, I mean, they are, but I kind of like that they're the main bad guy or the main force that's threatening Black Widow as an obstacle. You know what I mean? But anyways, so we basically see Yelena and Nat have a family reunion, sister to sister, by throwing hands and pulling guns on each other. And then they call a truce, and I was like, what was the point of all that? Why didn't they just talk? Why did they have to fight each other? And if I want to be generous, it's because Yelena doesn't know if Nat is under, but she's an Avenger, and she would know that she's not. But I don't know why Nat wouldn't let her talk. Because she even talks to her before they meet each other in person. So it's like, hold on, wait, let's talk this over. You know what I mean? Like, there was no need for them to fight other than for them to fight, I feel like. I don't know. It was badass, though. They were kicking each other's ass. I thought that was great. It's great to see them challenge each other, you know what I mean? To fight one another. And then we understand what Yelena wants is that she would be able to take it to Tony Stark or whoever to analyze the serum or the chemicals inside, so that way she can expose it to all the other widows and whatnot. And then Yelena has to explain to Natasha that she didn't destroy the Red Room, she didn't kill Dreykov or any of that stuff. And so we just basically see Natasha realize over and over and over again how much she failed. She failed to destroy the Red Room. She failed to destroy Dreykov. She didn't kill Dreykov's daughter, which is another thing. And so over and over and over again, we see her just kind of like fail and fail and fail, like from the past, thinking that she succeeded, you know? But whatever. I'll let all that go. I'll believe it that somebody could survive an explosion. You know what I mean? So outside of that, Nat and Yelena start helping each other out. They get chased by Taskmaster. They change outfits. They go on the run. Blah, 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 blah. They need somebody to like figure out where the Red Room is or whatever. And so they have to break Alexei out of prison. All of this stuff. They just go through the whole family tree, you know what I mean? They get their fake dad out of prison because he's strong enough. So that was a cool little piece of it. They break him out and he's kind of like, oh man, you know. It just kind of feels like, why are we, you know, I get it, but at the same time, it felt a little weak and a bit uninspired for me. I just kind of was like, or at least not break him out of prison. Like, the prison break felt a bit much. But I do understand how, after maybe serving his country and no longer being used, they were like, let's just lock him up, where he can no longer embarrass us or whatever. Stuff like that, you know? What else is there? Then they meet their mom, and I think in a really emotional scene, or which should be a bit more emotional, comes off a bit awkward, but I felt the heart there when Yelena confronts them and is kind of like, don't say it was fake, like, you were the only real family I ever had outside of the Red Room, and that wasn't really a family, it was more so I was forced to do things for the Red Room. I was forced to kill people, I was forced to be an assassin, I was forced to get messed up where I couldn't have kids. You know what I mean? All of that stuff. And being controlled by whoever. It just felt... You know, I understand her feelings of like... I was only 6 or however old she was. I could only imagine myself at 6 years old thinking that my parents, you know, or my pretend parents or whatever were the only things that actually like comforted me or ever actually gave me like a room or any kind of a family life that you see on the TV or on movies or whatever, you know what I mean? So I can definitely feel her emotions, and it goes to show that Florence Pugh does a great job in this movie. She has her Russian accent, she plays the part, she fights, she's comedic, she's funny. She has good moments and whatnot. It fits. I think she does a good job in this movie. And then we kind of get a little bit more backstory with, she tells it to us. She tells us about, Nat tells about how she and Clint hid in Budapest for like 2 days or whatever. You know, stuff like that. I thought that was a lot more interesting. I wanted to see, you see, what's missing here is Hawkeye. if Jeremy Renner was in the movie, I feel like a little flashback of that, of their time or how they met, and then her resolve to join S.H.I.E.L.D. and what she had to do. I feel like it would have elevated it. It would have given it a little something. You know what I mean? Maybe Chris Evans as Captain America shows up as well, because they have a close relationship. And especially after Civil War, I would think that even just a little cameo of him showing up and them planning to save everybody in the raft or whatever, the prison in the water and stuff. I thought that would be cool. It definitely would have brought it up. But after Avengers Endgame, they were all kind of like, I mean, they weren't done. Jeremy Renner wasn't done. He was still doing, he went on to do Hawkeye season 1, which I thought, you know, if he's still in the game, you know what I mean? But I don't know when filming for this took place or what it would take to get him onto the film or whatever, but hey, whatever. Anyways, they go to see their mom. They have the dinner table conversation, and it's basically just Yelena crying, Natasha telling everybody that it wasn't real, who cares, blah, 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 blah. Alexei talking about being the Red Guardian, trying to get with Mina, Rachel Weisz's character, and Rachel Weisz telling them about the chemicals and the whatever that Yelena got and found, and alerts the Red Room that they're there, and so they're going to be in trouble. Natasha and Rachel Weisz switch places with like some... In Captain America the Winter Soldier, they use that face mask thing where it's like digital. They digitize the face. Not like Mission Impossible where they use real masks. This one they use a digital mask and it can cover your face, which doesn't work because Rachel Weisz and Scarlett Johansson are not... It doesn't fool anybody because Rachel Weisz is taller, so it doesn't really work. Or it shouldn't work, but they trick the camera somehow to make you think otherwise, but it shouldn't work. Anyways, they switch places. Alexei gets taken hostage, so does Yelena. And so basically they set up a plan to destroy the Red Room by going to the Red Room, meeting Dreykov, fighting him. Yelena gets an earpiece where Rachel Weisz can talk to her, and they can talk amongst themselves, and Alexei gets to fight Taskmaster. This whole thing, the Red Room just gets destroyed. And then Dreykov is introduced, and he's just a weak villain. It's not even interesting to see her fight him, or it's just a bit weak is all. You understand what they're going for, the themes, or the women being controlled by men kind of a story, you know what I mean? And how they use their strength or their mind control to like get them to do what they want. And how they can overcome the man, you know what I mean? But he just hasn't been present, like at all. And when he does show up, he's pretty generic, just bad for being bad. He wants to wage wars on the world and use his Black Widows to do anything and everything, just bad. And it just doesn't stick the landing. It's not as... What I think could have been unique or could have been an interesting turn is watching how their mother, right, Mina, they figure out another way to the Red Room or whatever, right? And it's actually, she did kill Dreykov, not Dreykov's daughter. She failed to kill Dreykov's daughter, but she did kill Dreykov. And then Dreykov's daughter, who turns out to be Taskmaster, it's not a man, it's Taskmaster. Mina, the mom, she took over the Red Room, seeing how there was mismanagement of the women, seeing how there was an opportunity for women to grab a piece of power for themselves, and that if they were willingly able, and that But essentially put, Mina, or the mom, she wouldn't be able to convince these women to give up pregnancy, to give up their social lives, their whatever, just to straight up be assassins and killers and soldiers. She would know that in order for women to gain any sense of strength or power or belief, or any kind of strength amongst a world of men, they would have to take it themselves. But she couldn't do it alone, and a small team isn't enough. She needed an army of widows. And so she created the chemical to mess with their brains because she's smarter than, I guess, men, right? Like, that would be the play. But she turns out to be the bad guy, the villain. She took control of the Red Room. She took control of Dreykov's daughter. She sent Taskmaster after Natasha, after Yelena, because they're both widows and they're both with connection to her. And she's, you know what I mean? It'd be a nice twist to see the mom be the bad guy as opposed to some generic Russian guy who we don't even care about or know and see until the later half of the story, like the very end. It just feels a bit, I don't know. It's missing something. It's pretty basic, but I guess they had to get rid of somebody. Somebody had to be the bad guy. And I think it was easier to have like we'll sweep this under the rug story, like plain and simple, as opposed to something a bit more deep, I guess. Do you know what I mean? You understand? I hope that makes sense. It just feels... It doesn't feel personal enough, especially because we don't know anything about really Dreykov. And in the end, we just see Natasha fail over and over again. She didn't destroy the Red Room. She didn't free any of the Black Widows. She didn't kill Dreykov's daughter like she was supposed to for S.H.I.E.L.D. She didn't kill Dreykov, who was still using Black Widows under her nose the whole time, and she didn't even fight back. It just feels like there's too many things that are pushing Natasha down. And then when she finally confronts him, it feels a bit like mockery of her character, or just like, that's where it starts to feel like, oh, she's not playing Natasha Romanoff anymore. She's playing Scarlett Johansson. I don't know. It didn't work for me. It didn't sell it for me. Now when it actually went to action, when it actually went to fighting with hands, like the bridge scene with Nat versus Taskmaster the first time, or and the Red Room and falling down again and all that stuff with Taskmaster, I thought those were really cool. I felt like they just needed to, I think the action pieces were really well done. Even though the CGI was a bit goofy, and when Yelena like exploded the thing and she went flying backwards, I felt like that was a bit goofy, but it's like a moment like that is a bit cheesy, and it's kind of like, Yelena, no! And then she blows it up, but she survives, like she doesn't get sucked into the blast or anything. It just, it was a bit goofy, I guess. But anyways, she magically finds a parachute or whatever, jumps off, saves Yelena, free fall and dives to face Taskmaster, and then at the last second opens Taskmaster's parachute, and then they both land and blah, 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 blah. So, anyways, with Dreykov destroyed, with the Red Room destroyed, and the Black Widows freed by Yelena and the toxins or whatever, they're able to be free and no longer have to be whatever. So, good on them. And then they walk away, and Natasha's going to deal with the authorities to arrest Dreykov or whoever. And then they don't show her, like, dealing with anybody, but they show her, like, looking all cool, like she'd won the day and whatever. Dreykov dead, the Red Room destroyed, the Black Widow's free. Yelena and her relationship, cool. Alexei and her mom are cool. And then so we see her escape the authorities. They find all the bad guys. And then We see her with her haircut that she has in Avengers Infinity War, and that she gets a Quinjet from her friend that snuck her out of the country and stuff and gave her new identities or whatever. And she's going to help Steve Rogers save everybody at the raft. And we already know how the story plays out. She goes on the run for however long, the next 2 years. And yeah, it's disappointing that this is a prequel. And it's all the more reason I think, or I should think, that, you know, this should be a sequel, or it should be already a defining Black Widow movie. You know what I mean? But if this is a standalone, it should be a standalone, right? Where it's in real time after Avengers Endgame or whatever, right? If Natasha had lived, then I feel like this movie has some real weight to it, because we know where the pieces fall. She lives, and then she deals with this. You know what I mean? Finally closing the chapter on that part of her life. You know what I mean? I think this works better in real time after Avengers Endgame, as opposed to a prequel in Civil War time. You know what I mean? In 2016, before Avengers Infinity War and stuff like that. You know? But sadly, the story didn't go in that direction, and that just makes the story just even weaker, because it's not even about Natasha Romanoff. It's about Yelena and Alexei, and setting up all of these other characters later on down the line. Which the end credit scene of this movie shows Yelena grieving Natasha's death, and then being approached by Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character, Valentina, and she introduces Yelena to the man responsible for killing Natasha, and she shows Clint Barton. And so Yelena's going to go kill Clint Barton and stuff. That's the idea, and that's where the movie finally ends or whatever. But there was possibility with this movie, and I think the direction they went in for it was the best that they could do with what they were going for. They needed a generic villain that nobody would really... Why didn't he show up sooner? None of that. You know what I mean? They needed they needed some sort of emotional tie to Natasha's backstory in the Red Room. So they introduce a sister, a whole fake family, and then they bring them all together like, she still has a family, but we're not meeting them until now. And she said that the Avengers are her only family. So which is it? You know what I mean? It just feels like it's contradicting itself right then and there. And now with her gone, it just feels even more like it didn't even really need to happen or really matter. Except to bring in Yelena, who comes in later into the MCU. But by then, I think that if this movie took place after Avengers Endgame, it would make their relationship even better, even more connected, more juice, you know what I mean? More juice being squeezed out of the lemon here. There's a lot more to this if she finds them after Endgame. After already building a life, being an Avenger, facing their toughest enemy yet, as opposed to dying and then coming back in a prequel. It just feels like a bit like, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. This movie was just, it was just meh. And that's not because Scarlett Johansson did a bad job. I think she's definitely the selling point of this movie. And I have to say, hold on. This movie, all right, she executive produced, whatever. She was there when the director was filming or using shots of her, all right? I have to say, the amount of ass shots that they did in this movie is wild. she was like in Sweden or whatever, and she was like, "Oh, I guess I'm out of gas. Let me walk over to the car to like put the gas in the car or whatever, or like put the gas in the trunk so I can drive to the gas station to like fill up my generator." And she's walking to the car, and it's literally just an ass shot. Literally just like, "Oh, let's watch her walk." And it's not even her top half, it's literally her waist and below. She's carrying the petrol, and that's like, yeah, that's the money shot, baby. What? What is that? I swear on my life, you can go back and rewatch that scene. She's in Sweden before she fights Taskmaster. That's when like Taskmaster shows up. Before that, she's like, "Oh, I'm in Sweden." She's eating like cereal or whatever. She's eating dinner, watching like movie on some sort of little TV or whatever. And then the power goes out. She goes outside. She's like, "Oh, the generator's busted. Let me go check this." She pulls on the string, and then she's like, "Oh, and I'm also out of gas. Let me go get it." And then as she's walking to the car, putting it away in the car. It's just, I mean, what is going on here? It literally made no sense. So, but then Scarlett Johansson sued Disney and whoever because she didn't get a theatrical release. It went straight to streaming, I think. I don't remember how. Maybe it was like cut short because of the pandemic in 20. I don't know if it was supposed to release in 2020 or 2021. I forget, but the idea was that it was released around that time or made or like specifically made for that. But maybe they released it in theaters for a time, cut it short, and then put it to streaming. And they said, well, the pandemic, people weren't going to the movies. It's not our fault. And then Scarlett Johansson said, well, you're cutting away from my box office ticket sales here. Like, you're cutting money from my pocket as a executive producer or whatever. You're taking my half of the profit or whatever, something like that. She sued them, she won, and I'm glad she won. Any chance you get, you know what I mean, to basically say, you know what, just pay me some money, and it's not like I'm going to cry for Disney. It's not like I'm going to be like, you know what, Disney's right on this. They shouldn't have to pay her. It's like, no, I'm with her on this, but again, the movie's just, I could have done without it just because I feel like her story wrapped up pretty nicely. I feel like introducing any new characters is... I think if they introduced Yelena as like... maybe loosely... I think if Scarlett Johansson made a quick cameo in the Black Widow movie with Yelena or Florence Pugh as the star, I think it would have been just as good for her character. Like, she didn't have to be in the movie the full time. She didn't have to be the star of it. She just has to make a quick appearance or maybe a little flashback of when Florence or when Yelena and her worked together or whatever. You know, or were sisters maybe? I don't know. It doesn't work for me. It's one of the ones that is just like, oh yeah, she has a sister, she had a fake sister, her name is Yelena, and that's it. That's all you pull away from this movie, really. It's not, and she had the Red Guardian, Alexei was her fake father. That's it. That's the most that you pull away from this movie, is that Yelena and Alexei, he's the Red Guardian of Russia, he's like the Russian Captain America, he has the super soldier serum in him, but he never got any glory, and then, Yelena's a Black Widow, and that's the end of it. I don't know. There are certain scenes that I could rewatch, like the falling fight or the bridge fight, but outside of that, not really. I don't know, it's not because their acting was bad, it's just the story, I guess. It just didn't work in the overall MCU timeline for me. It just didn't work. It should have been introduced earlier, I think. But if it were introduced earlier, I don't think we'd get Florence Pugh. I don't think we'd get David Harbour. So it's difficult. So this is an interesting setup for Yelena, for the Red Guardian, or Alexei. It's a nice beginning for them, as opposed to a good ending for Black Widow. I think she deserved more. And I think that's kind of why my feelings towards Clint or Natasha, living or dying, who gets to go on. It's why I feel a little tension, or I feel like there's a debate going on about it. It's just that, like, it should have been Clint, so that way Natasha gets that moment with her family and sister after everything, you know what I mean? Tying up loose ends. And Clint gets to die saving his family. Like, that's a huge sacrifice, but they're back. And they get to live a life, you know? And he made that sacrifice for them, you know? So, and then Nat gets to have another family to look after or look out for, or to be with, you know? And then Clint Barton's daughter gets to become the next Hawkeye. Stuff like that, you know? Or maybe she becomes like a Black Widow, or, you know, under Natasha's tutelage, you know what I'm saying? I just feel like there's a lot more meat on that chicken wing, you know? There's a lot more meat on that chicken wing if she survives, but they went with Clint, and there's definitely story there. There's definitely more to it. He's a bit of a mystery outside of what we do know about him and his family, but, you know, there's something there, and it's interesting. But overall, this movie, if you missed it, I wouldn't be mad at you. If you missed it, I'm not going to be like, oh, what, you should watch it. No. You missed it, I'll just sum it up. Natasha had a fake family. You meet her fake dad and fake sister, and they're going to continue to be in the MCU. End of story. Nat's dead. You don't have to worry about Dreykov. I guess Taskmaster's still alive, but not for long. Little... Sorry. That's a spoiler for another MCU movie later on down the line. If you haven't watched it yet, I'm sorry for spoiling it. But, you know, at this point, not my fault. So, yeah. This movie, it missed for me. It's a definite miss for me. And I wouldn't be upset if you missed it. So, in the end, when you're watching Black Widow, really dig in on the action sequences. I feel like that's where you're going to have the most entertaining time for yourself. Don't follow the story. Don't care about the story or the dialogue. Just watch them fight each other. Watch Natasha fight, you know, Taskmaster. Watch Natasha fight Yelena. Watch Natasha and Yelena escape from Taskmaster. Watch Natasha and Yelena break Alexei out of prison. Watch Natasha and Yelena and Alexei and Mina fight in the Red Room and then escape, and then watch Natasha fight Taskmaster for the last time. And, you know, overall, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And that's it. That's all you need to care about. Just know that Yelena's alive. She's there. Alexei's alive, and he's there. And Taskmaster's alive, and she's there. So, yeah, case closed. Appreciate the action scenes, and that's all you need to worry about. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.